So we had a bunch of people on to talk about Dave, and you can't really get the full scope of Dave Cokin. Not all of you guys got to meet him, but a lot of you did who were listening, because he was very much open when, he'd be out at an event, and he was everywhere. He was certainly out and around for boxing. That was one of his big sports. But on our radio remotes, he'd come up, people start talking sports with him. You guys like to do that. And I'll tell you, when a lot of times when I talk sports with listeners, I'm like, hey, what do you think? And, if they say, they give me a take that I think is stupid, I'm just like, okay, good. Dave was great because he'll rip your head off, right? That's just the way he was. He's an opinionated guy, believe what he believed. And that's what made him special, right? He was an aggressive dude, loved sports, had lots of opinions. You'd come in and do a show with him, and 98% of the time he'd have an opinion on something. If he didn't, he'd tell you, I don't care. We got better as time went along. You get a rundown, and you cater it to make sure that Dave cares about all the topics. And he was good to go. He was certainly good to go. And man, his passing today, just like when he announced that he was, really sick, his passing this morning, he passed away at 71. The internets, Facebook, Twitter, anywhere else you can post a message, the messages of love for Dave and what he did and who he was, it'll blow you away. You read them, it's like, wow. Griffin is relatively new to our staff. I'm sure as he's hearing stories and seeing comments, like, wow, this guy, he made a freaking big impact. And, Steve Cofield put it nicely in the last block, just talking about Dave was who he was. He was proud of it. He lived the way he wanted to. That's the way it was going to be. That's the way it was going to be. And on the show, and we pulled a couple of cuts here and there. We have more archives. We'll be pulling more of them. This was just like a random sampling of stuff that we found today upon hearing that DC had passed away. If he needed to go at somebody or he needed to give an opinion that might make people uncomfortable, he would do it. Great messages out there. I saw Andy Isco, Rip Dave, you were a true professional in all you did and how you lived your life, both in sports-related areas and in your other interests. You'll be missed, will be thought of often going forward, always with a smile. And I had stories coming back to me today about things that David said on the air or predictions or things, because he, as we did a show together, more and more, the book opened up and you could get a lot more out of Dave of what went on off the air with Dave than maybe he had ever done before. And he told some great stories. I'll relay some of them. So Andy worked with Dave in the gambling world, the sports advice world. John Rabe is a guy that we both worked with back 96, 97. That was an old Sports Fan Radio Network. And Dave did his own show. Dave did a show with Pete Rose, which was a very interesting show. And Dave was mostly a Pete Rose devotee. But John Rabe worked there. And John, back in, this is now 30 years ago, said, I was honored to work beside Dave for a few years in the mid 90s. We had a lot of fun. A thing I would say about Dave, and he probably hasn't talked to Dave in 20 years. Because the thing I would say about Dave is that he knew who he was more than most do. Fiery, funny, self-assured, brash, and he will be missed. This clip that we pulled, we got on a topic of the LA Times writing something about how the sports books here were getting destroyed. And Dave's a Vegas guy. Dave knows about, booking. That's why he was here, because he basically had to get the hell out of Rhode Island. And he sent a message to the LA Times writer, like, you don't know what you're doing. You better respect the craft because you're giving out bad information. Come on, folks. We're not the land of mystery anymore.
The problem there is that the LA Times put somebody on a gambling piece who doesn't understand anything about gambling.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. It's like putting me here. You know what? You're going to do a piece on the economy today. I know there's a deficit. That's pretty much all I know. I'm not equipped to talk about that. Whoever wrote this piece, shame on the LA Times.
It's embarrassing.
You're close enough to Las Vegas. Hire somebody to cover sports gambling.
There you go. And I mentioned to him, I was like, well, it was Lance Pugmire who wrote it. He's a boxing writer. And Dave's was like, don't care. Don't care. Didn't get it right. Don't care. Well, he loved baseball. He freaking, I'll tell you what, man, he loved baseball. Dan checked in on social media. I'm going to play some baseball bites for you, but Dan DeMeglio checked in. He said, great voice, great man, great overall dude. You'll be missed. I used to listen to Dave on AM 920 back in the day, doing rush hour deliveries on the show with Seat and Ballpark Frank, who we lost Ballpark Frank a couple of years ago. He said, sports handicapping legend, RIP, brother. I have a lot more messages that I'll get to, but yeah, Dave called it like he saw it, man. If he saw someone who was kind of a dirtball and disingenuous, and there was a back and forth years ago between Jose Reyes, Major League Baseball shortstop, and owner Jeffrey Loria, and Reyes said he'd been done dirty by Jeffrey Loria, who you'll hear in the clip, but apparently the day before trading Reyes out of town had told Reyes, hey, you're here, you're good to go, buy a house, settle in. Dave saw this story and off he went.
But now he's being accused of being an outright liar by Jose Reyes, who's now at the Blue Jays. Reyes, he claimed last month that Loria had told him to buy a house in Miami the day before the trade went down. Loria is denying those claims, but Reyes is now being relentless. He says, he interviewed at the New York Post. He said he did it during the season too. Tell Jose to get a nice place in Miami, a good house. I don't have to lie about that. He traded me. That's fine with me. Just be real with me. Be honest. Don't tell me to buy a house and get a nice place for my family and stuff when you know you're going to trade me. Why would you do that? I believe Reyes. He has no reason to lie about it. None whatsoever. And Loria has a track record for being a liar.
There you go. A liar. I like playing these bites, and we're all sad that Dave has passed. And if you missed it, we've been talking about it off and on during the show, but Dave passed away this morning, had been battling cancer for 14 months, and finally went in for a little more care, a lot more attention in the hospice, and passed away. Some other messages from up on social media. Harvey, Big Harv, used to work at Lotus Broadcasting as a remote tech, and he said, I'm glad you went out the way you wanted on your terms. As I've told everyone, and a lot of people saw it to the tune of thousands and thousands of retweets about 5 weeks ago. Dave said, you know what, I'm ready. But Harvey said, God bless you, Dave. No more pain for you, good sir. Jeff said, rip Dave Cokin. He'll be sorely missed. I love hearing him on local ESPN radio here in Vegas. Always followed him. He would interact with everyone online on Facebook, was genuinely a great guy. And one of the things about Dave is he would. Now, he might go right back at you on Facebook, but he liked Facebook. He was very open. By the way, more well-versed in more areas, and you heard some of that on the air, but well-versed in a lot of different conversations. Like, he mocked on himself in that bite a couple bites back about, hey, basically, I know gambling. No one would come to me and ask me to write a piece on the economy. If I had to ask anyone, just about anyone on the ESPN Las Vegas staff years back to go write something on the economy, it probably would be Dave, because he would look into it. He didn't want to look an ass, and he would sound like he was educated. Chris Piper simply said, rest in peace, Dave. Chris, the reason, and there's hundreds and hundreds of messages, and I'll pick more of them. We scanned this pretty quickly today to talk about Dave and his passing. Chris is a super loyal listener to ESPN Las Vegas and a good personality, but Chris was part of our fantasy leagues. We used to do fantasy baseball, but especially fantasy football leagues with the listeners, right? So you're kind of, you're throwing your ego and your expertise out there to potentially get destroyed. And Dave, I'm not saying Dave was throwing back like dozens of beers and going outside and smoking weed with people, but he was into fantasy football. He had no problem. I think there's a lot of radio people who'll be like, I don't want to do this with the listeners. Dave's like, yeah, let's do it. Welcome to my world. I love fantasy sports. Now, he was much better at fantasy baseball than he was at fantasy football, but that was always cool. I'll get to some more messages. He's got a WNBA rant that we found. That was dynamite. He's got another rant. This is one of my favorite topics to do with Dave, on PEDs and steroids and baseball and hypocrisy and pomposity of certain people accusing others. Like, he would call bull crap on the table. And like I said, if it happened to have the theme of someone local in the crosshairs, then oh well. That's what makes a great sports talk guy, is a certain level of fearlessness. And I'll tell you the other thing. I get texts every once in a while about people on the show being arrogant. You understand what we do, right? We are supposed to sound arrogant. And Dave, there was an arrogance about Dave. That's what made him freaking great.